Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Answers for the Family with Alan Cardoza, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Greetings to all of you listening around the world, and a warm welcome as we bring you another edition of the Answers for the Family radio show. I'm your host, Alan Cardoza, and with me today is a special guest host, Joelle Jacobson. Joelle is a marriage and family therapist and clinical outreach manager for the Hazelton Betty Ford Centers, covering LA and Ventura County, the Central Coast, and Arizona. Joelle, thanks for filling in for Dr. Matt.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to have a great show today. And for everybody out there, if you're a regular listener, thank you for joining us once again. And if this is your first time, please make yourself comfortable as we bring you Answers for the Family. Now, each week, this show will address issues such as locating a runaway teen, family crisis intervention, building self-esteem, dealing with addictions, and so much more. Now, having over 30 years' experience working with families in crisis, I've been fortunate to meet and work with some of the top professionals in many of the helping fields who are all working to make this world a better place for all of us. Now, our topic today is Reengaged in Life, the Elevate and Peers Academies at Heritage School. Since its inception in 1984, Heritage has served thousands of young people and their families, utilizing a relationship-based approach with two exceptional yet very different program areas, Elevate Academy and Peers Academy, that work with teens who are experiencing a wide variety of mental health issues. Our guests today are Eugene Marshall, Heritage's clinical director, and Alaina Chatterley, one of Heritage's therapists. Eugene has worked with adolescents since 1995 as a residential staff member at Heritage. Because of his time spent with the students, Gene decided that he wanted to become a therapist at that school. Over the years of working with students and by observing other therapists, Gene learned that many of the relationships with students, that it is imperative if you are there to help them and you're able to allow them to make lasting change. What Gene finds most rewarding is watching students at Heritage overcome serious emotional or behavioral issues and to be reconnected with their families. Alaina first worked with teens as a trail walker for a wilderness program in Arizona. She enjoyed the intense connections made with these students and enjoyed the natural consequences that to her spoke much louder than any therapy could. Shortly after completing her master's degree, she joined Heritage, continuing her emphasis on natural consequences and self-directed change. She has also worked in substance abuse recovery, outpatient individual and couples counseling, and outpatient children's play therapy. Alaina shared with me that working with teens in residential treatment has been her favorite place to work and where she has found the most successful outcomes. Eugene and Alaina, welcome to Answers for the Family.
We're so happy to be here.
Well, glad to have you here. So, Gene, I think one of the things that we'd like to start with is to talk a little bit about residential treatment. One of the things that I do when I am either reading a book about our upcoming subject or going over some of the questions that we're going to ask, I do it at the gym. And I had somebody come up and ask me, so who's your guest going to be this week? And they ask me this quite often. And so I started explaining to them a little bit about Heritage. And they said, I don't even know what residential treatment is. I mean, they really didn't understand what it is because they had raised their children and hadn't gotten into a situation to where it was necessary. So I think to start off with, again, if you can just share a little bit, if you can describe or define residential treatment for those who may not completely understand.
Sure. And a lot of people do get residential treatment mixed up with, is it rehab or is it a boarding school? And actually residential treatment is a care facility. It's a healthcare facility that works with students who've struggled with mental illness issues, behavioral issues, learning issues, that require care on a 24/7 basis. They may have had services prior to residential. In fact, most have had outpatient therapies or programs, supplemental programs by school districts or other professionals to help them be as functional as they can across settings. And when those haven't worked, residential treatment becomes the next best option. And so they come, and wherever the facility is, like Heritage is in Provo, Utah, it's a live-in mental health facility, school that will help them deal with the social and emotional issues that have impacted maybe their relationships with their families or peers, as well as their ability to access their academics. And so we provide the care 24/7 with therapies, academic support, and they attend school. And while they do that, they have different goals from an academic department, the residential department, which is the homes that they live with, and then their therapist.
Now, Alaina, as I was reading up a little bit about you as to get prepared for this, one of the things I read was your belief in the long-term nature of what Heritage provides. So, why do you believe so strongly that the long-term nature is an ideal environment for genuine internal change for teenagers?
That's a really good question. Internal change is really what has to happen for change to stay lasting. When someone goes to a short program or is perhaps just doing outpatient treatment, it's easy to fake it or to have short-term changes that don't last as soon as you remove the stimulus and the reward. So this longer-term treatment, especially in a relationship-based model like Heritage's, lets our students truly change from the inside out, rediscover themselves, discover their passions, and discover what they want in a long-term enough setting for it to really solidify and stick with them.
All right.
So parents understandably become concerned when their therapist, educational consultant, and or school recommends out-of-state residential for their son or daughter. Why do so many students leave their home state to go to residential, and how can a family be strengthened when separated by thousands of miles?
There are two questions that I see you've asked in there. The first one really is, why do they leave their home state? Our setting in Utah is gorgeous. There is a lot of land, we're spread out, and we also have quality staff. We have a number of universities right around us, so we have a lot of young adults who are looking for a college job that often then becomes a career. So in a relationship-based model, you really need quality people to make that work. And we have a wealth of resources there at our hands. So sending out of state is often necessary just to find the right setting, to find the right residential placement. As far as how to strengthen family, I understand it's really scary to send your teen far away. But clearly, like Eugene mentioned earlier, other resources weren't working. When you reach a point that you've exhausted everything, and parents themselves are usually exhausted, there's this sort of magic that happens when you put some space and some distance there and let parents relax a little bit and do some of their own healing as the teens start on their own journey. And I tell the parents I work with, you almost reverse the good cop, bad cop dynamic at home. The parents are the bad cop, and they're enforcing everything and trying to keep their teens safe or sober or alive. And once they're at Heritage and far away, Heritage becomes the quote-unquote bad cop, and we're keeping them safe and alive. And it gives parents the chance to take a step back, to rebuild relationships, and then through phone calls, through Skype family therapy, through letters, through visits, through parent conference weekends, we do everything we can to keep the families reunited and rebuild those relationships with that space and distance that promotes healing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And as you were saying it made me think of a particular client who had said that not only had their child gone to a residential treatment program and had done great, but they said that they had come back and they had started to backslide over the summer. And what they realized was when they then went off to college, and it was a college that was a very structured environment, they realized that they became the good guy again because of the structure that was given from that. I thought that was a very interesting observation that the parents had, is that it seemed to to allow them to really connect better with their child by having them a little further away and by having the structure being administered by someone else. I think that's a great point, and I think it's one that's not brought up enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was looking on the Heritage site, I saw that you do have a lot of adolescents that come in with histories of trauma. And so there is the trauma-informed care program. Can you talk about that?
Definitely. And I want to define trauma because it's so much more than just a diagnosis of PTSD. Really, trauma can be any adverse childhood experience that has a lasting effect. It could be a family divorce or back to adoption issues. It could be bullying or sexual traumas. And sometimes these are complex traumas where multiple things have happened. And truly, it's a root cause of behavior. Can you repeat the rest of your question?
Just that because there is unfortunately a high percentage of trauma that children and adolescents may experience, and then which leads to behavioral issues, substance use, eating disorders, self-injury. What treatment modalities do you use with the students that come in that have experienced trauma?
Okay, thank you. Campus-wide, we take a trauma-informed care approach that from the CEO down to our frontline staff to our cafeteria and maintenance staff understand that there are underlying traumas, there are root causes of behavior. And so we're very careful to avoid re-traumatizing. There's a certain amount of trauma that can happen when you take somebody out of one environment and place them in a new environment that's unfamiliar. So all of our staff are very careful to build relationships of trust and safety and help our kids feel as much control as they can, and then to provide care from just understanding that there are root causes to behavior and not just react to the behaviors that we see, but really look a little bit deeper. In an environment like ours, there are a myriad of interventions available also. You can go for walks, go swimming. We have horses on our campus. We have a lot of very physical activities, as well as lots of different people to talk to. So when somebody's feeling triggered or struggling with something that's just a symptom of their trauma, there are lots of options available for them to calm down, to self-regulate, and to find a trusted relationship to talk it through. In addition, a lot of our therapists and those that work in our trauma program are TFCBT certified, the Trauma-Focused Cognitive Behavioral Therapy certified. We have a number that are EMDR certified. So clinically, in addition to our front staff, we're prepared to help work through those traumas.
And Eugene, and as we discussed before, you have sort of the two different tracks or the two different academies. What is it about a particular student that you would look at and say that they may be a better fit for, say, Elevate Academy, because it being geared a little bit more towards those that have experienced trauma in their lives?
Yeah.
Share with us a little bit about that and how you come to that decision.
So for the Elevate Academy, it's specifically designed to help the students that have the mood, anxiety, and trauma-related issues. And so they will do a lot of, like Alaina was saying, a lot of physical activity, but also with their therapies, really learn the relationship between their emotions, their behaviors, their thoughts. And with students who struggle with trauma, that's huge, because when they did go through a trauma, their primary belief systems were compromised or changed. So when we look at students for the Elevate Academy, we'll look at what are the primary diagnoses, what are the primary issues. Are they mood-related, anxiety-related, or trauma-related disorders? And that's how a student will end up being placed in our Elevate Academy. And we have a lot of different approaches, not just in therapy or on the home, but also with our recreational therapy department, who help our students develop confidence, resiliency. They're all specifically targeted to helping them understand that they can do more with their lives, whereas maybe they weren't feeling that way based on, like I said, the mood, anxiety, or trauma-related issues.
So on your site, you also have parent testimonials, and many of the parents say that they've lost their son or daughter, or they aren't who they used to be, and then that Heritage actually brought their son or daughter back to them. How does that happen?
I can answer to that.
Sorry, can you say that one more time? I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. So on the Heritage website, there's a section regarding parent testimonials, and many parents say that they've lost their son or daughter, or they aren't who they used to be. And then after the program, it reads that Heritage has brought their son or daughter back to them and who they were before the issues came up. So how does that happen?
So Eugene, let me start with that. I think depression and anxiety are absolutely debilitating. And for a youth to need the level of residential care, oftentimes they're holed up in their room, they're paralyzed by anxiety or depression, or perhaps not wanting to live, and they truly have lost the best pieces of themselves. They don't feel pleasure in anything or just feel paralyzed by anxiety or trauma. Lots of times they're self-medicating, using substances to try to numb the pain or overcome it. And their self-defeating behaviors and patterns within the family are just dysfunctional to the point that leaving is the best option. And that's when residential has this sort of magic that our teens come into a new environment. They have a clean slate where there's constant activities. From the day they get there, it's let's go hiking, we're going to do this activity, we're going to the Nickelcade, we're along with their peers and their friends of their age group, and their occasional co-ed activities to look forward to. And there's all these things to re-engage them, as well as the fact that they have zero option of substances or checking out that way. And also a rotation of caring staff that keep coming in fresh, and there are lots of different personalities to connect with that can reach out to these students, whereas parents at home have been exhausted and all their resources are used up. And so that environment really gives teens a clean slate, and it gives them the space and the support to rediscover their best selves, to shake their old patterns, along with the therapy help of actually working through their thinking patterns and overcoming mental health issues. Then they can learn new skills and build a new way of life for themselves.
And Eugene, what would you add to that?
I was going to add, it kind of answers part of what Alaina talked about earlier about the program not being a short term, like done in 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. To get that kind of a result to where they feel like they've regained their child again, there's a reconditioning process that has to take place, and it really is the students, when they've, like Alaina said, with depression and anxiety, with it being so debilitating, they've always been conditioned to maybe inappropriate coping skills, which has helped exacerbate and keep those disorders flaring, so to speak. And so the length of stay helps with reconditioning so they can understand what was a maladaptive coping skill, and then they get to recondition with new skills, and with the new skills comes the new beliefs about how they view themselves, view the world, view their families, etc. And so I think that's a very imperative part of treatment, and why parents will say, I feel like I have my son or my daughter back, is because they do a lot of hard work and, again, a lot of reconditioning to get them to a more healthier sense of self.
Now, I think a question for both of you, and I'm someone who has personally brought young people to your program, so I've also interacted with some of the parents afterwards, and I've been told by many parents that, in particular, the Elevate Academy really helped their child become re-engaged in life. So share with us a little bit about some of the steps. So envision that there are parents out there listening, and some of the steps of how you got them from literally being checked out to having re-engaged. Because again, imagine you're speaking to some parents that are out there that are envisioning their child completely checked out, living in the basement, and they're really, really worried about what it is that they can do. So just take us through some of the steps. I think that's one of the things that will really start for them to get the ideas of, oh yeah, I could see how that could work.
One of the first lines of defense are our frontline staff. In a relationship-based model, you need that relationship. So we get a brand new youth at our school who doesn't want to do anything and is resistant to everything. But staff and therapists start by just getting to know that youth getting to find out what he or she cares about, finding out what motivates them, in addition to the fact that the youth are making friendships with other peers around them who perhaps are further along in the program and remember what it was like to be back in those early stages. So there's the positive peer pressure that our youth will then say, hey, come to class with me, or hey, let's, come on this activity, it will be fun. And as our new youth build relationships with their staff and their peers, they want to do what the group does. And we have some fun activities with the exercise, with doing new hobbies, building these healthy friendships and these quality relationships. It just kind of works its magic to motivating these youth to wanting to be functional. Nobody wants to be holed up in their basement. For a youth to be stuck in their bedroom or paralyzed by maladaptive coping, things are not going right, and there's a piece of them that wants to be better, they just don't know how. So starting in this fresh environment paves the way, I guess.
Yeah, and to add on to that, with various activities, we'll process, like we might have wonderful recreational therapy activities or group therapy activities where they're engaged in things they don't normally do at home, and then we help them make the connection between, well, what did that feel like to do that? And so somebody who dislikes exercise may say, I didn't like it right at the beginning, but afterwards, I actually felt pretty good. So we try and help them make connections with other things that will provide more euthymic, more appropriate feelings and emotions. And once that gets rolling, then they become more, they start to contemplate what are some of these other things that my treatment team are presenting that could be good coping skills that I can use when I leave Heritage. And a lot when they're struggling with depression and anxiety generally have one coping skill or two coping skills, and then that's it. And so we try and expose them to numerous so that when they leave they have a toolbox. But making that connection is huge. Okay, I liked that activity, I liked how it made me feel, and then we just continue to prime that and make it repetitious in the program. And it becomes their norm. And so as they prepare for a transition home, that's what a lot of the therapy is about. How do we translate this home? What would that look like?
Well, and I want to talk for a minute about our awesome staff. We have staff that work the same home. We're set up in a family-style model. And so the same, 6 staff are almost constantly there with our youth, and they are not just babysitting. They're not sitting back observing. They're actively involved, and they know the 12 kids under their care. They know what they need, what they struggle with, and so they're actively pointing out, hey, how did that bike ride make you feel? Or, hey, what would your mom have to say about this? And so in a way, they are getting constant therapy, constantly having these things pointed out. And our youth really attach to and enjoy these staff, care what they think about them, want to be like their best qualities. And so I just can't say enough about how great our frontline staff are at really loving these kids, not just babysitting them.
Well, and I think I can even add to that as well, because it is sort of it's a culture. It isn't there isn't kind of an environment to where they feel like they're doing something wrong. It's actually being appreciated for something that's positive, and having gone through and toured many times, and it's been really nice to go through and have them be introduced to me, and then the first thing that they ask is, oh, then you must be such and such's boss. That's who brought me in. Please say hi to them. Tell them that whatever it is that I said in the very beginning, I'm sorry. I'm actually very appreciative of them now, when I wasn't necessarily very appreciative at the very beginning before I got here and realized all of the positive things that I was going to get out of this.
Yeah, that happens quite frequently.
Yep.
So many people in California are familiar with the Peers social skill model developed by Dr. Lageson at UCLA. What is the Peers program at Heritage, and how did you make the connection with UCLA?
Okay. Heritage wanted to develop a better program for our teens on the autism spectrum, and was researching and looking for what was out there. And at the time, and maybe it remains so, UCLA's Peers model was one of the only evidence-based programs that actually had evidence to make lasting change. And so they started reading it and figured out, how could we adapt this to a residential model the Peers program is based on a 16-week outpatient course. And so we have adopted those social skills into 2-week modules that our teens live. They have group therapy about it. They have homework assignments. They practice it. Their staff are there going over the buzzwords with them and actually interacting. And even campus-wide, like the cafeteria staff know what the Peers homes are working on and can, hey, I'm trading information with you, and point out what is going on with that. I think during that time they reached out to Dr. Lageson and told her what we are doing and asked her to come check it out. And it's sort of, in a way, give us her blessing, I suppose. And she came out and certified our staff at the time. So most of our staff that are still there are certified in her Peers model. Eugene, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, they came out a few years ago. It was awesome. And for a week-long training, ran us through the whole Peers program, all of the modules, how we can run it as a residential program. And so the therapists, the academic advisors, and the home staff, we all receive certification, and then now we implement that on the homes, running through their modules. And so every 2 weeks, they'll do one skill, and then practice those for 2 weeks. And they'll practice those in group therapy, outside of group therapy, with their parents. And then they'll start up the next skill the following 2 weeks, and then we will just rotate and continue to go through that program. And it's been awesome because the kids and the staff are familiar with, again, the buzzwords, the vocabulary, the purpose of each skill that's been taught. And so if a student is struggling, the staff and other students can help the newer students on what skill they should be working on. It's been great.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. Everybody stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Answers for the Family. Founded over 25 years ago to meet the needs of families in crisis, West Shield specializes in resolving adolescent issues that negatively impact the family. From preteen to young adult, we are experienced and qualified to help. We offer solutions which include referrals to a network of top professionals internationally that we work very closely with in the fields of educational consulting, psychology, and psychiatry. Our in-home crisis intervention care program helps to stabilize families and bring effective resolution. We are supported by our licensed investigation company that enables us to offer legal and expert services for locating runaway teens and more. Our therapeutic transportation services help to ensure that adolescents in crisis are safely provided transportation to specialized schools and programs with unmatched experience and success. Simply put, West Shield Adolescent Services is the best solution when your family is facing personal crisis. Call 1-800-899-8585 and let us help you. And we're back. You're listening to Answers for the Family. Our guests today are Eugene Marshall and Alaina Chatterley with the Heritage School. And what we're talking about now is really re-engaging, how young people are being re-engaged in life by really being surrounded by a lot of very loving people who are helping them get through the sometimes issues that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
So can you please describe the 16 areas of emphasis and how you measure progress in those areas?
Okay, it's a 16-week course, the outpatient, and so there aren't necessarily 16 precise skills, but they're really awesome social skills. Like there are 3 different units on conversational skills, how to trade information, how to have two-way conversations, electronic communication. We teach things like the 2-message rule, which I think every teenager should know. You're not supposed to leave more than 2 messages without a response, whether it's text or voicemail. I know that's a common problem.
That's great.
There's talk about choosing appropriate friends, how to appropriately use humor. How do you enter a conversation and how do you exit a conversation, not awkwardly? These are things that we take for granted and do every day and have since our youth, but those on the spectrum just really don't understand those. They have get-togethers, how to plan a get-together, how to invite a friend over, what kind of things you do on get-togethers. There are sections on good sportsmanship, how to handle teasing or embarrassing feedback, one of their favorite skills is called tease the tease, which means that if somebody says something teasing to you or rude, you're supposed to tease their statement and say something like, well, who cares? Or, well, tell me when you get to the funny part. Things like that, skills that these kids need to learn. They go over bullying and bad reputations, how to change your reputation, how to handle disagreements, how to deal with rumors and gossip. So these are skills that I think a lot of teenagers need, but they definitely 2 weeks at a time are getting intense treatment on them in our peers program at Heritage. Now, the peers social skills model has a test, has a pre-test, and you can also give it as a post-test or a follow-up assessment. It's the test of adolescent social skills. But in addition to that test, there really is just observational changes you can make. A youth comes in awkward, struggling in some of these areas more than others, and over time, just the parents, the staff, their own peers notice the changes that happen.
As you were saying that, and as I was smiling here, thinking, I know a lot of adults that could use that also, not just teens.
Universally needed.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Okay.
I was going to say we recently had a parent conference weekend where the parents came out a few weeks ago, and some of our parents whose students are in the Peers Academy, that was the comments. Were very emotional about sharing how their son or their daughter was able to have an appropriate full-on conversation with them, and then to also say thank you, a heartfelt thank you, and they're able to empathize with their parents. And for parents, when they're telling you this, they're getting very emotional. Like Alaina was saying, just seeing their students using the basic social skills that we might take for granted. But yeah, that does freshen my mind just from a few weeks ago. It's like holidays, opening birthday gifts, when parents get to see these social skills being worked by their kids, and it becomes part of their common practice.
So we know that many students that aren't able to function in a classroom setting are not always due to behavioral issues, but due to sensory processing issues. What coping skills do you teach so a student can be successful in and outside of the classroom? And do you have an occupational therapist on staff to work with these students?
I can answer the first portion, and then Eugene, I'm going to defer to you. Most people can tolerate the typical amount of sensory stimulus in the world, just ambient noise in the room, lighting, changes in temperature, taste, the feel of a chair. But there are some, and a lot of our kids in the Peers program need a more proactive and preventative approach to handling this overload for them. So in the classroom, our teachers are well aware that sometimes sensory overload is what leads to behavior problems, and you don't consequence it or treat it the same way that you would perhaps an oppositional child who's doing those things out of, for some manipulative purpose. So the first step is helping our teens notice their sensory needs, to take a prevention-oriented approach instead of just freaking out and trying to find coping skills later. So we use sensory breaks. They can have accommodations in class, different seating, have fidgets or feely objects, go for a walk. The staff that work with these teens are aware, too, of what they need and can help them preventatively take the steps that they need to take care of themselves.
Okay. Eugene?
Yeah, and to answer yes, we do have an occupational therapist who does work and has helped us design a lot of the programs, the homes for our Peers Academy students. So we have sensory rooms on our homes, and with the occupational therapist help, the colors, the textures, the softness of the carpet, all of those things have been taken into consideration to help design their homes. They're very sensory friendly for all of their sensory needs, but yes, our occupational therapist has played a huge part in helping us develop and maintain our Peers Academy. So we have students who, they may need to go to class and have their fidgets. Some might need to suck on candy or take a weighted blanket or a weighted toy with them, and it helps them regulate so that they can remain in the classroom and work on their schoolwork.
Well, while we're talking about the Peers Academy, we have a instant message that has come in. And again, I want to thank those that take the time to send us in an instant message or to send us in an email ahead of time that allows us to ask some of the questions or make some of the comments. This one reads, after receiving the press release about the show, I went to your website. I was reading the overview of your 2 academies and was very impressed with the Peers Academy description. A family member's oldest son, who is 16, has a condition that she terms high-functioning Asperger's, but he also suffers from depression. She is looking at programs and will be tuning into the show. This may be a difficult question to answer, but every teen is different. But when looking at outcomes, can you describe outcomes of similar students, especially how it applies to having a chance for becoming a positive, functional adult?
What your reader, or the instant message described is very typical of a student on our campus. It's rare to get one diagnosis and one diagnosis only. Very few of our kids are purely on the spectrum, and that's it. It's common to have comorbid anxiety, depression, and so in addition to all these peers things we're describing in their individual therapy, as well as with the help of their staff, they're working on changing thinking patterns, changing their behavior patterns, trying to work through that depression, work through any underlying trauma. So we very individually look at each student and their comorbid diagnoses and what they need. And the outcomes for a student like was described are very favorable. I have a young man on my caseload now who's done really well, and he is high functioning on the autism spectrum, but also deals with some depression, and he's getting ready to go home successfully at the end of a year-long stay. So that's exactly what we treat, and they do very well.
I love that, and anybody who's a regular listener to the show knows that I love happy ending stories. Eugene, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just kind of like to follow up with Alaina. The students that are on the Peers program, they'll still get a lot of the therapies that students on Elevate, where the primary diagnosis is mood, anxiety, or trauma disorder. So they'll still get a lot of those therapies as well. And on the Elevate Academy, some of our students there also benefit from some of the social skills training we do on the Peers. But we feel like the Peers emotion regulation is always a big issues with anybody that's on the spectrum, and may take a little bit longer to help process through that, just given some of the cognitive issues that come along with ASD. But I'm just going to validate everything Alaina said.
Yeah, well, and I want to add one more thing. The benefit of having these 2 programs on the same campus is that there can be interchange between them. Some of our higher functioning on the spectrum kids also benefit from rubbing shoulders with our Elevate kids. So they may check over and spend time on a home or go on off-campus activities with boys that are going to be more normal for what they will handle if they go back to mainstream schooling, or the kids in their neighborhood. And so that's the benefit of having those 2 programs, is the back and forth that can happen.
Now, is that sort of a mentoring type of position that they might have with another student?
It can be. It depends on each student. We have some that have mentored or taken others under their wing, and others that just fit in and maybe have made a group of friends on another home. So they could also use the peer skills and plan get-togethers with them, practice phone calls, any of those sorts of activities.
All right. I was going to say, and we have another listener question, and this one's, I think, is more of a comment. This one says, I'm interviewing with an educational consulting group in Pasadena, California, that is considering expanding its client base to include students with ADHD and similar educationally challenged disorders. I look forward to learning more about your work during the interview, and if all goes well, recommending they contact you. So I think it's nice to hear that you have somebody that would appear that they are evolving career-wise into the educational consulting field. So it sounds like the fact that they know about this show, they're trying to learn more about programs. Talk a little bit about that as to maybe how you educate ed consultants. How do you get the information out to the professionals so that they know what it is that you have to offer, other than coming on this show?
Right. Eugene, you probably have a bigger picture of that than I do.
Yeah, so we have our marketing team's fantastic, and we'll do a lot of traveling across the country. California, we actually have a specific marketing staff that lives out there in California, and she does a lot of trips to meet with education consultants, families or school districts to educate them on our program. There's the basics like listening to a show or going on the website. But we try and reach out to as many as we possibly can. We attend the ICEA conferences. We're on their website, which is for specific education consultants. And then there's also the advocates for families who we also work with and try to get to know and share with them the specifics about our programs and how we think we can help their students. But our marketing approach is we've got a very broad marketing approach to try and reach professionals, families, and other agencies.
Well, and I'll add that people can come tour Heritage anytime, contact admissions, or even just call and ask questions. It's a very open door policy. You can come see what you'd like to on campus. It is not, we're not going to show you just all the shiny parts. We very much enjoy having visitors.
Yeah, and I can add to that. Going back many, many years ago, but as someone who was bringing young people to programs, we had a policy that we would not bring somebody to a program until either we have checked it out or a professional that we know personally explains that this is where they're going to go and such. So my point is there were programs out there that we wouldn't transport to until we got more information. And I know that, as I said before, I've had many tours of Heritage because they're always very open about, and it's almost like prideful. I mean, it's like, well, of course we want you to tour. Yes, there are some new things going on. Please come on over, check it out. And I think that speaks volumes too, to just being so proud of what it is that you're doing that you want people to see it. There is nothing that anybody's trying to hide. It's something that's good, and why not? So again, I appreciate it.
And part of those tours, which Alaina was touching on, is that we actually have our students be a part of those tours, and they're not specifically picked. Mm-hmm. We want parents to be able to meet a whole different variety of students. We don't pick the students that have almost graduated the program. We let them meet with students who are fairly new to the program, have been there a long time. So we feel like it's a very transparent, honest tour for parents or education consultants if they need to gather information as they're preparing or considering a decision for residential treatment.
So what is your typical length of stay?
The average is around 15 months. But that's very subjective. It depends on diagnosis, how difficult things are, what the home support is like, whether they'll be going back to a step-down program or going home mainstream. So that's the short answer. 15 months, but it's very subjective.
And Eugene, anything to add to that?
No, everything is right on point. It's very subjective and based on those variables that Alaina highlighted.
All right. Let me ask another question, just from the standpoint of the type of student. We know that there is no perfect student. There is no person that fits in any particular cookie cutter. But I think for some of the parents that may be out there thinking, well, but let's say that a parent's out there and they're like, but my child recently attempted to commit suicide. Would you still be interested in taking that child, or is that child a good fit? And Alaina, if you could take that, because I believe we've lost Eugene.
Okay. We have an admissions committee that examines each file that comes into us, or each admissions application, very carefully on a case-by-case basis. So we do work with recent suicide attempts. We do work with eating disorders. We do work with substance abuse disorders. It just depends on the severity and whether it's a primary diagnosis and what it's motivated by. So none of those rule somebody out. It would just have to be an admissions decision about if we think we would be a good fit for treating that youth.
All right.
As far as if there is a diagnosis of an eating disorder, do you have a registered dietitian on site?
We do. We have a dietitian that meets with all of our incoming students and determines if they need special meal options, which, let me detour really fast, we offer vegetarian options. We actually have a kosher kitchen for our Jewish students. We are one of the only treatments facilities that has a full kosher kitchen. So they very carefully evaluate individually what each student needs. Some are on double portions, maybe they need to gain weight, need to bulk up. So, yes.
Yeah, and as you mentioned about the kosher kitchen, it was something that I was aware of because, again, I was talking to a family here in Los Angeles, and they were a Jewish family, and that was one of their concerns, as we were preparing to bring them out to the program, and they said, but we eat kosher. Are they going to be able to handle this? And I said, well, yes, I am very, very confident that they do. They have a special kitchen for it.
Which, with a kosher kitchen, we have a rabbi that comes in and meets. So I know I'm just going to detour really quickly. That's a question people think, am I going to send my kid to Utah and have them, converted to the predominant religion there? Yeah. But we are a non-denominational campus. We have a worship center on campus, and there are non-denominational services. And we have a rabbi that comes in to meet with our students. And we have a chaplain who is there to meet individual needs and help our students get connected with their faith and what is important to them and their families.
And for the students who have admitted with a diagnosis of substance use disorder, are there meetings available for them?
Yeah, the way that it's designed is they participate in a school class that is health credit, but it's part substance abuse where they work through the 12 steps and have group therapies. And we have on-campus NA meetings. As they progress in the program and have more privileges, we try to offer off-campus NA meetings so they can attend in the community.
All right. And in checking the time, we have about 3 minutes. But again, as I mentioned before, my favorite thing is a success story. I want everybody out there to be able to hear some of the great success stories. And I know we don't have time to get all of the success stories that you could tell us. If you could share one or two of your favorite success stories, we would appreciate it.
Okay. One is a young woman of mine who left about 6 months ago. Prior to that, she'd spent since her youth in and out of mental hospitals, suicide attempts, overdoses, severe family problems, and came to Heritage and was kind of a wreck, kind of a mess, but spent a lot of time figuring out herself, figuring out what she wanted, grieving the fact she was going to have bipolar disorder for the rest of her life, and figuring out how to manage that rather than just react to it. And she has been home for about 6 months now, is graduating high school, getting ready to go to college, found a part-time job. Stories like that are very typical. I could tell you that same variation, but it's just fun.
Well, now you said home for about 6 months. Share with us a little bit about the aftercare. That's sort of been a pet peeve of mine from many years back. I know that it's been improved upon greatly. So share a little bit about the aftercare that sort of brings the whole thing forward so that they don't backslide like used to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a youth that's completed our program as far as they've made the bulk of the changes they need to, and we spend a lot of time in the maintenance phase, maintaining those changes. At the same time, we're preparing the family. We're setting up rules at home. We're reaching out to therapists at home, figuring out what their schooling is going to be. So a lot of the Heritage aftercare, I guess, is front-loaded, and it happens before a youth actually leaves our facility to make sure that we can pass that baton onto people a whole state away. There's not a whole lot we can do, once we're a whole state removed, but we do our very best to set up the wraparound for our student to go home and have somebody else pick up the torch.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. And Eugene, if you can hear this, thank you for coming on. And for everybody out there, you can go to the website, and again, I believe it's just heritage.com. Is that
heritagertc.org.
Yeah, heritagertc.org. You can go to the website to get more information. Alaina, I would love to be able to have you come back and share with us where we have a little more time, and maybe to bring a student with you or an ex-student, somebody who's graduated to come in.
We would enjoy that. It would be great.
And to tell their story as well.
Okay, thank you.
So again, thank you. And again, for everybody out there, please tune in next week when our guest will be Chris Palmer, author of Now What, Grad? A book designed to help graduating college seniors and anyone in the job market succeed in establishing a career, advancing career performance, improving work-life balance, or simply leading a more productive life. And everybody knows somebody who can benefit from this show or one of our past shows. So please do them a favor while helping us by sharing this podcast. You can also visit our archives of past interviews at answersforthefamily.com or subscribe to the show on iTunes and now on Google Play Podcasts. The next time you're on Facebook or Twitter, please remember to stop by our page and check out some of the latest posts. And if you like them, please like us and spread the word. So, Joelle, Alaina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And for everybody out there, please be with us next week on Answers for the Family.
Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Answers for the Family with Alan Cardoza, right here on LA Talk Radio.